philosophy of stoicism. There's a lot of men that were raised by women only, raised by mom and had sister there, auntie was there, granny. And then the boy went to school, and then his teachers, every teacher was a woman. Most of you guys right now can probably remember that one male teacher because he was the only male teacher you had. All the rest of your teachers were women. Lots of feminine energy around a lot of young boys today. And that's tragic for men. You guys talked about people in jail and people dead that didn't have How many homies do you know? Think about it right now. You go back to your childhood. How many homies you know today are dead because they lacked emotional maturity? They made bad decisions and emotionally uncontrolled decisions. I can name 6. And then when you think of him, where was his father? And if he had a father, what kind of man was he? I challenge every man to follow the philosophy of stoicism. Your life will change, brothers. Trust me.
Something a barber used to always tell me is, he says, there's a place for you. There's always a place for you. And I think you need to figure out when you want to learn to be emotionally mature. Because that's like, are you gonna learn from the small mistakes, or you gonna learn from the monumental ones? But as men, you have no choice. Life gonna make you emotionally mature. How do you want to find out? Because there's always a place for you. Either it's gonna be, either you're gonna find a place that you want to be, or you're gonna find yourself in a place that you don't want to be. How do you want to become emotionally mature? Which path do you want to choose? Because life gonna humble you. As men, life humbles us every single day. It's gonna humble you. You think you just like an old boy when he thought he was too big for his britches, talk shit to his offensive coordinator. Fuck you, man. I'm gonna be 5th string. I'm a 5th string wide receiver. Now you know wide receiver. You ain't even riding the pine. You ain't even on the practice squad no more. You sitting there gone fishing like everybody else, watching other people take your job. So you could have been making $300,000 a year playing the 5th wide receiver on the team, but instead you had to take that L. Life will humble you as a man. How do you want to be humbled? Do you want to be humbled in the worst way possible? Or do you want to be humbled in the best way possible? Where somebody comes in and your father or your uncle or your coach sits you down and say, hey, look, right now ain't your time. Let's talk about it. Let's get you better. Or you're going to talk your shit and they going to show you the shit.
Yeah, fellas, this is all checking your ego. I always say we always hear negatively mostly about the ego, but the ego is one thing that can either keep you safe or put you in danger. I know a lot of guys from the land that's been changed because they had no emotional maturity. They couldn't check their ego. In the art of war, it teaches us to pick our battles. That's essential. One thing that I always suggest, especially to single women, to single parent women, for their boys, is to get their boys in wrestling. Wrestling will teach you emotional maturity quick, because it's just you and that man on the mat. So you have to be able to make these decisions in that split moment, or you're going to get put on your back and get embarrassed. And I think that helps create that mentality early on in young men, so that when they do become older, they can actually survive out in the streets. We see a lot of the young men now with their interactions with police getting changed because they have no emotional maturity. So it's imperative, and even in this case with him, even though it didn't cost him his life, but it cost him his livelihood. So it's absolutely imperative.
All right. Go ahead, Rilla.
Viz, that poet came out. I had it when you said it the second time. I said, "Oh yeah, he's saying what I think he's saying." That man lacked emotional maturity, so he got changed. I like that. A lot of what I heard, DeVale, if I think that's how you pronounce his name. A lot of what I heard him talk about was being self-aware, and I think that's the foundation of emotional maturity. You got to be aware of self. The hip hop I grew on, it talked about knowledge of self. And I apply that today because I'm constantly checking in with self, challenging self, questioning self, what's going on with self, right? Another thing, this is just for the young bloods in the chat, or for any gentleman, get you one of these. This is a lifesaver. This is a journal. This is a journal. I got about 6 of them down there. All of them are filled to some varying degree. Whatever thought I'm having, I usually jot it in there. Some point when I transition or when I change, my kids will inherit these and they'll get to read my thoughts, and my grandkids and so on and so forth. But this also helps me refine emotional maturity. Those moments where instead of japping out, take a moment, breathe, think for a second, and then reassess the situation. Man, that's key. I love that Hink said, it's not necessarily dependent on age, right? Because DeVale also talked about in that clip how he's teaching his sons through providing space for them to express whatever emotion they feeling. And then he's coaching them and walking through that with them, right? So I agree with that. A lot of stuff that I know now, I wish I had known, right? And thank God, with my seeds, with my sons and daughters, I can practice that with them. My daughter's a little bit easier, but for my boys, I find it imperative that I give them that space to be able to open up and allow me to coach them through their feelings, you know what I'm saying, as best I can. But the one thing, and I'll just land it here, the one thing that I would encourage people, and the main thing I kept hearing with DeVale as he was speaking was just having that self-awareness. He was keenly aware of where he was, what caused him to lose his livelihood or whatever, the chip that he had on his shoulder, and he worked. It sounds like he worked to refine that, because if I understand it, him and his wife have a very successful podcast. He has a situation with, I know him through the deal that he has with Actively Black. So it looks like whatever he may have lost in his NFL career, he's got it back on the back end. So shout out to him.
Go ahead, Sham.
I am calm while the storm is raging around me. That's the philosophy of stoicism. There's a lot of men that were raised by women only. Raised by mom and had sister there, auntie was there, granny. And then the boy went to school, and then his teachers, every teacher was a woman. Most of you guys right now can probably remember that one male teacher because he was the only male teacher you had. All the rest of your teachers were women. Lots of feminine energy around a lot of young boys today. And that's tragic for men. You guys talked about people in jail and people dead that didn't have How many homies do you know? Think about right now. You go back to your childhood. How many homies you know today are dead because they lacked emotional maturity? They made bad decisions and emotionally uncontrolled decisions. I can name 6. And then when you think of him, where was his father? And if he had a father, what kind of man was he? I challenge every man to follow the philosophy of stoicism. Your life will change, brothers. Trust me. A stoic is a man who leads a moral life. He has a detachment from emotional reactions. You know what I'm saying? There's no knee-jerk reaction. Doesn't just come off. You know, he's not moved by external circumstances. And he directs all of his attention to things that he can control. Somebody steps on your sneakers. Funny, look, I got my Trumps came in. Y'all see him?
Yes, sir.
He ain't tripping. And Epictetus, who was a stout Stoic from the 4th century, I think, he said this: of all things, some are in our power and others are not in our power. Of all things, in our power are your thoughts, fellas, your impulses, and your will to get and will to avoid. And in a word, everything which is of your own doing. Things that's not in your power include the body. You can't tell your heart to stop beating right now. You can't tell your lungs to stop breathing, not for too long. Your property, your reputation, your office, and in a word, everything which is not of your own doing. Things in our power are by nature free, unhindered, untrammeled, and things not in our power are weak, servile, subject to hindrance, and dependent on others. Epictetus wrote that, and what he's basically saying is, don't trip on shit that you can't control. Stop reacting emotionally to things that you can't control. And it's important that if you find yourself, fellas, that's watching this show, the kind of man who gets upset at things that he can't control, learn a little bit about stoicism. It'll teach you that as a stoic, you don't trip on things that you can't control, but you only worry about the things that you can. And I'll leave it at that.
It's a wrap. Cut. On to the next. I think all man, hey. That's that shit. That's that shit.
So you say everybody needs to learn about stoicism, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a difference between like regulating your emotions and being stoic.
Yeah, well, I think they're one and the same.
Yeah.
You know, a stoic regulates his emotions. That's what a stoic actually does. You know, it comes from Greek. It was originally Rome. They taught this in Greece. They had stoicism schools in Greece that taught men to be, hey man, listen.
Marcus Aurelius.
Marcus Aurelius. You know, if you guys ever watched the movie A Gladiator from 1999, you know, Marcus Aurelius was the king that died first. Marcus Aurelius, he's one of the most famous Stoics. And what it basically says is, okay, why are you tripping that it's raining outside? Why are you upset that you got in a car accident and somebody totaled your favorite car? There's nothing you could have done about it. Mm-hmm. Why are you tripping that your woman cheated on you with her work husband? That's what she was going to do it anyway. So what happens is, you know, if somebody steps on your brand new white J's, your Air Force Ones got scuffed up. Why are you ready to fight about it? If somebody spilled a drink on you at the club, why are you tripping? Why don't you just say, okay, you know what? Shit happens. And basically, if you had the kind of emotional control that Stoics have, you wouldn't care about anything that you can't control. And the only things that you would worry about are the things that you can. But far too often, men, especially men who think from an emotional standpoint, and that's why I brought up men that's raised by women, because, you know, emotional beings and whatnot, and they bestow that upon their sons. They are driven by their emotions, and they find themselves, as Trev said, as Sweeney said, in jail or dead.